Welcome to Aging Revolution, the Java podcast. My name is Ty Mines. I am your host today. We are joined with Marta Keane, retired Java CEO and the CEO consultant. Marta, what can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I've been involved with seniors for most of my career. I love working with the wisdom that they bring and the knowledge of the world. And so when I came to Java 13 years ago, I was thrilled to be able to help them stay in the community of their choice as they age. And I'm delighted today to talk a little bit more about Older Americans Month and flipping the script.
As you mentioned a little bit, May is Older Americans Month. It's one of our favorite months here at Java. The theme this year is flipping the script on aging. This theme encourages people to challenge how society talks about aging and how we approach aging in general. You worked with Java and other older adult programs for over a decade, so you have a unique insight to the very real problems that older adults in our community are facing day to day. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge for older adults right now?
I think one of the biggest is that all of us that are aging are seen as being a single cohort. There's a loss of individuality and personhood. And so we're approached as if we're all the same and we're all decreasing in our abilities and capabilities. And we don't do that with any other cohort. We recognize that there are differences. And I think that is a challenge, especially as we grow in numbers. Baby boomers are almost finished now, coming into that over 60 group. And that means that in our region right now, there are 21% of the population is over 60. And by 2030, at least 25% will be. And yet somehow we still seem to be silent and marginalized. And so I think that's our challenge, how to be appreciated.
Definitely, yeah. How could you define what ageism is, and how does it cause harm on our older adults?
I think, as you introduced at the beginning, ageism is really that inability to think about or live in the shoes of what it is as we grow older and making some assumptions, some stereotypes. And so we really do need to move away from that way of thinking so that we are able to deal with people as individuals and be much more person centered. And I think that's the harm it does. Whether it's with our friends, with our grandparents, our parents, with our neighbors, everyone is at a different place. And ageism assumes that people are at the same place and usually in a very negative way, in a way that suggests that they are incapable of doing things. And it's often done with humor, which somehow makes people think it's acceptable. You know, the cards, birthday cards you send, the jokes that are in the different comic strips promote that idea. And that's what kind of allows it to just be there in our society and never really questioned or challenged. Certainly, the ads on TV or in magazines completely feed into that with the idea of youth being what we desire to keep, as opposed to accepting ourselves. But that's really the challenge with ageism, is that we don't embrace our age.
I think something that's pretty interesting that I didn't really even think about until I started working here is ageism isn't just a single generation problem. It's something that affects everybody. Uh, you know, young people are constantly told you can't do this or that because you're too young, you're too immature, you don't have the skills or the knowledge. And older people are told you can't do this because you're too old, you have gone through your best time. It's time to move on to your next chapter, whatever that may be. And it's just such a ridiculous idea to think that you can't be knowledgeable or talented at 20 and you can't be knowledgeable and talented at 70. We like to say that age is just a number, but it's true. I mean, it's just when you were born, really. It doesn't define who you are or how you act.
I think you make a great point because we do tend to forget that we do the same thing with younger ages, with any age. It's there's stereotypes that we bring, and we again really need to break that down because we've seen that there are many talented people that are young and have passion, and you can have passion and be talented as you move through the continuum.
So, talking a bit on ageism and those stereotypes, what are some of the common misconceptions about aging that you hope to address this month? Or maybe not you, but you hope that people like Java address this month?
Well, I think one of the things that I heard a speaker many years ago talk about is the idea that seniors bring wisdom and a value to the community. And that's what I would hope. And I know that in Java's Define Ageism promotional materials, they really speak to that and really help us think about what that means and what that looks like. And I think one of the things I'm looking to do is more one on one relationships as a retired person, or as I like to call it, as a person who is reinventing their life rather than retiring. Then I'm really looking to find ways to understand that personhood. And actually, in the last 2 weeks, I've had a wonderful example of what you were talking about with meeting with younger people. I've had the opportunity to meet with someone who is heading up the Public Service Advisory Board for the students at UVA, and hearing the passion she has around how do you bring an ethical practice to volunteering, which is an important part. We know that generations like to come together. We had an intern for the last 2 years that just finished her senior paper on bioethics and looking at telehealth and used some of our practices during COVID as a base to make assumptions from. And there's also a master student in urban planning who would like to look at how you can do planning that is age friendly, that is across the all ages. But as you think about seniors, you're thinking about everybody. And so having those um, younger people who are demonstrating an interest in aging is so exciting and inspiring, as well as talking to the colleagues that have been friends or work partners throughout the years at Java who live in that space. It's just wonderful to see that there is something that can be promoted across all generations. And I think for me personally, that's what's kind of come to the forefront in an unplanned way during the month of May.
This goes a little bit into my next question, but when we think of challenging those stereotypes and promoting a more positive view on aging, would you say that those intergenerational connections is a big part of that?
Oh, definitely. I think anything we can do one on one just creates a wonderful opportunity to make it more about the person and not about the stereotype. And I think things like this podcast and blogs and just different social media posts all help get that positive story out in the media. I know that as the CEO before at Java, we tried very hard to balance. Yes, there are needs of seniors, there are needs that we are trying to meet so people can age in the community, and there are contributions of seniors. It is not all one sided, that there are seniors who are volunteering, that there are seniors who move to this community to give back or to develop new companies that then provide new ideas and new employment for people. And so I think that's the key, is just helping people to get a broader picture of what that looks like. And because then it's really hard to lump everyone together the more you have individuals. I know that the intern got a grant to try and bring the seniors in our community center over to Alumni Hall when the students play bingo, because that is something they both share. And that would be a lovely opportunity to break down for some students who haven't had the opportunity to be around grandparents or aunts or uncles or whatever, to just interact and talk to somebody during the game, because they have something they can talk about immediately and then see what else grows from there.
I think a lot of the ageism that we see in specifically younger people is due to this fear of getting older. Society, as you've mentioned, it really values youth. So if you're living in a place that values youth and tells you when you turn 45, no one's going to care about you, it's kind of hard to think about aging in a positive way. So I think that by having these intergenerational connections and having younger people and older people getting the chance to interact on a very personal level, you take away those barriers of fear that are already there because you get to see that, well, it's not just I sit around all day watching Wheel of Fortune and I lose everything that I had in my youth. You know, you get to see that older people are still living lives to a very full and positive way, the way that they want to live. And it may not look the same as each person, but you don't just lose your life the second you turn 60. So I kind of I think that those intergenerational communities is one of my favorite aspects of our work that we do, of just getting to see how different people interact and there's different generations coming together for a common cause. It's always nice.
Absolutely. And I think to reinforce your point, the School of Data Science at UVA came over to do a presentation about artificial intelligence. And I was so glad that they did not make an assumption that our members either didn't care or wouldn't be able to understand it or wouldn't be interested in that. And then they'll be hosting a field trip over to their new beautiful school. I was like, "Oh, can I join in? I'll be a member of the center." And so I think that's a wonderful way to break down some of that for the students that are at the data science school, for the staff that are there, and for our members to feel like, why, yes, they were valued, and now they could go home and actually explain to their kids what they learned about artificial intelligence. And so the more opportunities like that it is, it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's great. We kind of touched on this, but how can communities better recognize and celebrate the achievements of older adults in their lives or in their area?
That's a really good question. And I know we all struggle with that one, to figure out how do we get that word out there. And it just keeps coming back to those one on one experiences. How do we take the extra time? And I think this is true anywhere, not just with those that are aging, but how do we take the extra minute to ask the question, to find out more about somebody, to today, when I was meeting with the person in charge of the Public Service Advisory Board, we found that there were so many other things that we enjoyed that were very similar. We, at 50 years apart in age, had things that we still shared. And by just having that time to talk, we were able to explore and learn more things about each other, which then changes the way I view a student, although I'd like to think I already viewed them positively, but and the way she might have viewed someone who was 70. And so this is just wonderful that that's how I think we can do it. The more we can facilitate those opportunities to naturally be with each other. I often think back to when I was growing up, the thing you did, because I took dance lessons, the things you did was your recital or your dance group went over to a nursing home and did a performance, and that was lovely. And I know that the residents appreciated it. And I think, but yet now, what do I know? It's that it would have been more lovely if each of us had sat down and spoken with the person for a while. I mean, the dance was nice, but it's that connection. And that's what we learned, and we've all learned during COVID. It's about socialization and connection. And when you lose that, and we've seen it, people are struggling now as a result of that. And seniors experience that all the time, not just when there's a COVID or any other kind of situation. So I think if we can continue as we do to find those ways for different groups to just spend some time with each other, when the nursing students come to the community center or the high school student cosmetology group comes, you can just see the joy on both sides. And so this is what it's about. How do we keep finding ways beyond our community centers to make that happen?
Yeah, I agree. So this is going to be a kind of obvious answer, I guess, since we're on the Java podcast, but what resources and support systems are available to help older adults live fulfilling lives that everyone deserves to have the chance to live?
Yeah, I think we're very lucky in this community. We have a rich array of ways to get involved. I think everybody gets involved at the level that they feel they can provide purpose and be engaged. And so at the most able level is probably volunteering. We've got a lot of volunteers. The Center at Belvedere has volunteers. A lot of nonprofits rely on volunteers. So you can find that way to see what's interesting to you and do that. I think when that may be more difficult to do, it's wonderful to join the center, whether it's our community centers or the center at Belvedere or the YMCA or any number of places, or faith-based. A lot of the faith-based communities have different programs and that they run, and so all of those give people a way to have that connection and stay socialized um, and be able to continue to be involved. And then when maybe there's a cognitive or a physical or emotional limitation, then it's important to continue to stay stimulated. So, whether that's through the Respite and Enrichment Center or other possibilities, it's important that there are places at every level for people to feel like they're a part of a community, which then makes them a part of this community.
I think one of the things that people don't tend to think about when thinking of volunteering at Java is that a lot of our volunteers are also members. They'll
Yeah.
volunteer at our community centers and be a member of the community centers. It's such a nice way to kind of, if you're not fully ready to step into being in the community center maybe all day every day, you can start off as a volunteer, see what it's about, see if it's something that you would enjoy as not a volunteer, as just a member who gets to do these fun activities and eat some fun food and experience new things.
I know. I loved when they had the International Month and the different meals had themes to them, and then they made the activities fit with those countries. And yeah, and many of our members have had the opportunity to be in some of those countries or be from those countries, and so it just was a richness. And they're always looking for those kinds of connections. I think they've done different kinds of what do you call it? Like ranking of like their favorite songs and just all kinds of things that give them reasons to talk about their experiences.
Yeah, that socialization is key. It's the integral part of all of it.
Absolutely.
How can individuals and organizations get involved in supporting older Americans?
I think it's good for groups to recognize that they don't have to just be the ones with a senior focus. So in our area, we have the Charlottesville Area Alliance, and there's about 30 member organizations. And I would say maybe three or four of them really live in the senior world. And so I'm really pleased that so many others understand in that old Venn diagram that there's some place where part of what they do intersects. And that leaves them open then to seeing how they can explore what they could do to support it. And I think that's the part of being age friendly or a livable community, is to recognize that almost everyone touches seniors, and you don't have to be JABA or the center at Belvedere or Jaunt to be the group that touches seniors. So by not putting us, and I say us because I am one, by not putting us in a box, I think that's the really important thing. It just keeps coming back around to the same theme, and that's really the key.
What are your hopes for the future of aging in America?
I have so many. I hope that we are recognized as an important group and part of the community. I hope that we will find a place for us to age as we choose to age. I hope that there'll be support at all levels with funding for those who aren't as able to do it gracefully and easily. And I hope that we will all learn ways to age in a healthy way because we really have a gap right now between lifespan and health span. And that means we have to start getting our health care at a much earlier age to all ages so that we can enjoy the greater lifespan that we see being told to us all the time. But that doesn't mean that it's a health span. So I would hope that we can also age in a healthy way.
And how can we continue to improve the lives of older adults in the coming years?
I think one of the things is on one of the flyers that I saw, um, Java has a quote that says, I choose how I want to live as I get older. And I think that's a really important piece. And then as I was getting ready for this podcast, it's funny how things happen. A friend sent me a quote from Meryl Streep. And I know it's a little bit long, but it just says it so well. Aging is not for the faint of heart. One day you wake up and realize youth has quietly slipped away. But it didn't leave alone. It took with it your insecurities, your rush to please, your fear of not being enough. And in its place, it left you with something stronger, a slower pace, but a steadier step, the wisdom to say goodbye without fear, the grace to cherish those who choose to stay, the power to be you unapologetically. Aging isn't about losing, it's about letting go. It's about learning to accept, to release, and to truly see. That beauty was never just in the mirror, it lived in every story, scar, and silent strength we carried within. Aging is a gift, wear it with dignity. And I just love that. I think that pretty much says, so much about how we can move forward. And I loved that it flipped the script on how we look at what we're losing and where we're going and the friends we're losing or how we look when we look in the mirror. And I just thought it was so fascinating to me that my friend sent me that. And I thought I have to make sure I read that.
So that's a really great quote. It flips the script on our thoughts on aging. Um, but I think that it's a very interesting look on the ways that we can stay optimistic and positive. You know, instead of thinking of the things that we're losing, we think about what we're gaining. Um, there is some evidence that has been taken from studies. Harvard did one that says if you have a positive outlook on aging, if you think positively of getting older, your life expectancy greatly increases. I think that there was one study that said it was like 7.5 years longer of life if you are an optimistic person. Um, and I think that quote is a great way of how people can think about being more optimistic on the aging process.
I thought, and I'm assuming it says, Meryl Streep, so I'm assuming that's correct, but it's just a great quote.
It is. Well, I just have one question left for you, and it might be the hardest question you have to answer, depending on who you are as a person. Um, but how are you flipping the script on aging?
I think the biggest way in my retirement is that I don't think of it as retirement. A friend of mine had said she talks about it as reinventing her life. And that is really what I'm doing. I think there's a stereotype with retirement that you're put out to pasture, that you can't do anything anymore. And this is just an exciting time for me to do some things that I haven't had the time to do. Some are things I like returning to, and some are new. So for me personally, that's meant that I am taking some Ollie classes, having a chance to read some books and have a discussion about them that don't have anything to do with leadership or management or aging. Not that I don't love all of that, but it's fascinating to not just read a book for myself, but read a book and then have other people talking about it with me. Um, I have been able to go to a gym that has a therapeutic pool, and I've actually been able to get in the water again, which is something since my spinal stroke I have not been able to do. Um, I am now on several boards as a way to give back because I knew I wouldn't walk away from my nonprofit love. And so for me, the board service is the way that I can contribute. And just being able to spend more time with friends, having lunch with friends. Oh, and being able to go to like live music and go to some of these performances that maybe in the past, or listen to a webinar that in the past I'd sign up for, and then a meeting would come in and I'd have to just take the meeting. So I really enjoy that my life has a freedom to it to pick and choose what I'd like to do. And I'm probably as busy now as I was before, but it's with things that I can choose when and what I'd like to do. Um, because I loved what I did at Java and I loved my career. And I'm also ready for the next stage. And I want to attack it with as much purpose and thoughtfulness and intentionality as I brought to my work.
That's great. Like you brought up earlier on our flyer, you can choose how to age at Java.
Exactly.
That's what we're here for. We want people to choose the life that they want to lead.
Yep. So, as I continue through the aging process, I also know that there's a place that I can ask for the help as things change for me, because I'm sure that they will over time. But I thought about these things before I retired or reinvented. And I think that was helpful to not hit that moment and feel lost, but to hit that moment and feel like, yay, I can embrace all these other things in my life.
It's great. So, is there anything you would like to share with the audience? A little final notes before we end off today?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think I got to say a lot of what I wanted to, but I think anyone who's listening to the podcast, I would hope that they would know that there is a place that can give advice, whether it's for themselves, for their parents, for their grandparents, for a neighbor. And I hope that they take away a sense of joyfulness, that it's not, aging isn't something to be feared or not to be talked about, but rather something to embrace and celebrate. And so I think that would be the most important thing, is that the more people that can feel that way, the I think stronger our community is for including all ages, as opposed to making decisions about who can't contribate anymore.
Thank you so much for being here, Marta. I really appreciate it.
Well, Ty, thank you for inviting me. This was fun.
I'm glad you had a good time. Thank you for listening to Aging Revolution, the Java podcast. We'll see you next time.